The year was 2375, and the underwater research station on planet Aquar hummed with activity. Nestled beneath the vast, alien ocean that covered nearly 90% of the aquatic world, the station represented one of humanity's greatest collaborative achievements with other sentient species across the galaxy. Sleek and efficient, its crystalline domes and reinforced chambers housed laboratories dedicated to studying the planet's dangerous but fascinating marine life. Dr. Maya Kepler adjusted her pressure suit as she prepared for another dive. At 35, she was one of Earth's foremost experts in xenobiology and medical science, specializing in comparative physiology between species. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her brown eyes reflected both determination and curiosity, traits that had propelled her career across star systems. "Final systems check complete," Dr. Kepler announced the station's AI, its voice resonating through her helmet. "Conditions outside remain within acceptable parameters, though I must remind you that the moray serpents are currently in mating season. Exercise additional caution." "Understood, Hermes," Maya replied, testing the flexibility of her suit's joints. The AI system, named after the messenger of the gods, coordinated all station activities and safety protocols. "I'll keep a safe distance from their breeding grounds." Her colleague, Solon, moved gracefully into the airlock beside her. The aquarian biologist's amphibious form was perfectly adapted for this environment. Glistening blue-gray skin covering a lithe frame, with delicate gill structures pulsing along his neck. His large, multifaceted eyes blinked in a sequence that Maya had learned indicated excitement. "The specimens we collected yesterday show promising neural activity," Solon said, his voice translator conveying his clicks and whistles into English. "Their regenerative capacity exceeds anything we've documented on my world. If we can isolate the enzyme responsible, it could revolutionize trauma treatment across the Alliance." Maya finished, sharing his enthusiasm. "The commander will be pleased. This could justify our funding for another 3 cycles." Commander Voss had been their strongest advocate back on Earth, securing the resources needed to maintain this remote outpost, despite budget cuts elsewhere in the Interplanetary Scientific Alliance. The former military officer understood the value of biological research that could benefit multiple species, particularly in medical applications. As they entered the small submersible that would take them deeper into Aquar's ocean, Maya mentally reviewed their mission parameters. Today, they would collect tissue samples from the luminous abyss coral, a colonial organism with remarkable resistance to the crushing pressures of the deep. Its properties might help improve space habitat construction. Another reason the Alliance considered this research valuable. The submersible detached from the station with a gentle shudder, and Maya watched through the viewport as the gleaming structure of their temporary home grew smaller above them. Aquar's ocean was a wonder. Its waters, a rich turquoise, tinged with bioluminescent particles that swirled in their wake. Unlike Earth's oceans, the liquid here contained a higher concentration of heavy metals and silicon compounds, creating an environment that had driven evolution in fascinating directions. "We're approaching the collection site," Solon noted, adjusting their trajectory with practiced ease. "Depth, 340 meters. Pressure, 37 atmospheres." Maya nodded, checking her equipment one final time. The specialized sample containers were designed to maintain the integrity of whatever they collected, preserving biological material in its natural state until they could analyze it back at the laboratory. "I'm picking up unusual current patterns ahead," Hermes warned through their communication system. "Possible underwater disturbance approximately 50 meters from your position." Maya frowned. "Volcanic activity?" "Negative," the AI responded. "Pattern suggests biological movement, large scale, possible pod behavior." Solon's gill filaments flared, a sign of concern. The abyssal mantas don't typically migrate through this sector for another month. Let's maintain distance and observe, Maya suggested, already adjusting the submersible's external cameras. If it's an early migration, the data would be valuable. They reduced speed, allowing the currents to carry them more naturally as they approached the anomaly. The water around them darkened, not from depth, but from the massive shapes moving in synchronized patterns ahead. Maya felt her breath catch. It was indeed a pod of abyssal mantas, their wing-like appendages spanning up to 15 meters as they propelled themselves through the water with hypnotic grace. "They're beautiful," she whispered, watching as bioluminescent patterns rippled across their dark bodies. A complex language of light that scientists were still working to decipher. "And potentially dangerous," Solon reminded her, though his own posture betrayed similar awe. "Their electromagnetic pulses can disable our systems if we get too close." Maya was about to respond when a violent shudder ran through the submersible. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, and the vessel lurched sideways. "Proximity alert," Hermes announced, its typically calm voice elevated with urgency. "Unknown object approaching at high velocity from Sector 7. Before either scientist could react, something massive collided with their vessel. The impact sent them spinning through the water, instruments blaring as critical systems failed in rapid succession. Maya's head slammed against the bulkhead, and she tasted blood in her mouth. Through the viewport, she caught a glimpse of their attacker, not a manta, but one of Aquar's apex predators, a titanium razorback, over 20 meters long, with a metallic exoskeleton evolved to withstand crushing depths. The creature was normally solitary and avoided human technology. This one appeared agitated, possibly threatened by their proximity to whatever had drawn the mantis here. "Engine failure imminent," Hermes reported, voice breaking up as systems failed. "Hull integrity compromised. Emergency ascent protocols engaged." Maya struggled to reach the manual controls as the cabin began to fill with water. "Solon! The emergency beacon!" The Aquarian was already moving, his species' natural affinity for water giving him an advantage in the rapidly flooding compartment. He reached the emergency panel, but as his webbed hand stretched toward the controls, a secondary explosion ripped through the submersible's rear section. Maya watched in horror as a jagged piece of metal tore through Solon's torso, slicing across his midsection. Blue-green blood clouded the water around him, his multifaceted eyes widening in shock before going still. The same debris struck Maya, shattering ribs on her left side with an agonizing crack that forced the air from her lungs. The submersible was breaking apart, but the emergency protocols had engaged successfully, escape pods deployed automatically, encapsulating both Maya and Solon's body in protective bubbles that began a rapid ascent toward the surface. Through waves of pain, Maya remained conscious enough to activate her medical suit's emergency systems. Nanobots deployed from compartments within the fabric, stemming internal bleeding and stabilizing her condition. A biofoam injection expanded around her broken ribs, immobilizing the fractures and preventing further damage to her lungs. As her pod broke the surface and transmitted its location to the research station, Maya's last thoughts, before losing consciousness, were of Solon, and the realization that the same injury that had killed him instantly had merely incapacitated her. It was a difference that would soon raise questions throughout the interspecies scientific community. "She should be dead." The words penetrated Maya's consciousness as she drifted back from sedated sleep. By all comparable physiological metrics, that level of thoracic trauma would be fatal to any Aquarian, Viridian, or Phobian. The voice belonged to Dr. Alara Taven, the station's Viridian physician. The insectoid medical officer's mandibles clicked softly as she continued. 3 ribs completely shattered, with bone fragments penetrating the left lung. Yet her autonomous medical system stabilized her condition before extraction. Humans are remarkably durable. This voice Maya recognized as Commander Voss. Steady, authoritative, with the slight gravel that came from years shouting orders across spacecraft decks. Our evolutionary history produced redundant systems and exceptional tissue regeneration. Maya tried to open her eyes, fighting against the heaviness of medication. The bright lights of the medical bay made her wince, but she managed to focus on the figures standing near her bed. Commander Voss stood with his arms crossed over his broad chest, his graying hair cropped short in the military style he'd maintained even years after leaving active service. Beside him, Dr. Taven's iridescent exoskeleton caught the light as she examined a holographic display of Maya's injuries. "Ah, she's conscious," Taven observed, compound eyes shifting to assess Maya directly. "Dr. Kepler, please remain still. Your nanomed suite is still completing tissue reconstruction." "Solon?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Voss's expression tightened. "I'm sorry, Maya. He didn't make it. The memorial service will be held once his family representatives arrive from the Aquarian homeworld." Maya closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the grief. She had worked with Solon for nearly 2 years. His brilliant mind and gentle humor had made him not just a valued colleague, but a friend. The unfairness of their different fates weighed heavily on her. "The rescue team recovered his body along with you," Taven explained clinically. Though Maya knew the Viridian was not being intentionally callous, her species simply processed emotion differently. The laceration severed his primary circulatory channel. Death was instantaneous. "We've suspended the deep water collection missions until a full investigation into the submersible failure is complete," Voss added. "But that's not your concern right now. Your job is to recover." Maya attempted to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her side despite the medication. "How long have I been unconscious?" "Approximately 17 hours, Taven answered, mandibles twitching in what Maya had learned was concern. "Which is another remarkable aspect of your condition. An Aquarian with equivalent trauma, hypothetically surviving the initial injury, would require at least 10 days of intensive regeneration therapy. The human capacity for trauma recovery has become something of a discussion point among the station's scientific contingent," Voss said carefully. "Several representatives have requested access to your medical data." Maya understood the implications immediately. In the 3 decades since humanity had joined the Interstellar Alliance, their physiological differences from other sentient species had been a source of both scientific interest and occasional diplomatic tension. Humans weren't the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but they had earned a reputation for exceptional endurance and adaptability. "They want to study me," she stated flatly. "The Bioethics Council has specifically requested documentation of your recovery process," Taven confirmed. "Some members have expressed skepticism regarding the reported extent of your injuries compared to Solon's." Maya's scientific mind engaged despite her grief and pain. "They think we're exaggerating the severity to make humans look more resilient?" Voss's expression hardened. "Some council members have suggested that either Solon's death or your survival has been misrepresented for political purposes." "That's absurd," Maya protested. "The medical scans could be manipulated," Taven interrupted, her tone neutral. "I don't share this view, Dr. Kepler, but I understand their perspective. The difference in outcome is statistically significant enough to warrant verification." Maya pushed herself fully upright, ignoring the protest from her healing body. "Then, verify it. I'll consent to whatever examinations they want. Record the entire recovery process if necessary." Voss looked concerned. "Maya, you don't need to prove anything. Your medical privacy is less important than scientific accuracy and interspecies trust," she finished firmly. "If my recovery can provide valuable comparative data, then I'm willing to serve as a subject. Besides," she added with a grim smile. I am a xenophysiologist. This falls squarely within my research interests. Tiven's antennae quivered in what Maya recognized as approval. I will inform the council of your consent. They will likely request regular documentation of your healing progression, tissue regeneration rates, and pain management protocols. Do what you need to do, Maya said, settling back against the medical bed as fatigue washed over her. Just make sure Solon's family knows exactly what happened. They deserve the truth. As Tiven left to make the necessary arrangements, Voss remained, his weathered face showing concern. You don't have to do this, Maya. The political games between species. This isn't about politics, she interrupted. It's about science and maybe, she hesitated, maybe understanding why I lived when Solon died can help prevent similar deaths in the future. Voss nodded slowly. Get some rest. I'll make sure the council doesn't interfere with your recovery. As he departed, Maya stared at the ceiling, thoughts drifting to Solon and the cruel randomness that had spared her while taking him. If her survival and recovery could contribute to the greater scientific understanding between species, perhaps his death wouldn't be entirely in vain. Little did she know that her decision would spark a controversy that would extend far beyond Akor's oceans, challenging fundamental assumptions about human physiology throughout the Interstellar Alliance. Over the next 3 days, Maya's recovery progressed with remarkable speed, at least by the standards of most Alliance species. The nanomed suite within her pressure suit had performed its emergency functions admirably, preventing immediate death and stabilizing her condition until she reached the medical bay. Once there, Dr. Tiven had supplemented these measures with targeted regenerative therapies, accelerating the natural healing process. The Bioethics Council, true to Voss's warning, had wasted no time in establishing a comprehensive monitoring protocol. Cameras recorded Maya's recovery from multiple angles, while sensors tracked everything from bone knitting to tissue regeneration rates. Initially, Maya had consented to this scrutiny without complaint. It was, after all, valuable scientific data. But by the 4th day, the constant observation had begun to wear on her. The council has requested another detailed scan of your ribcage, Tiven announced as she entered the medical bay, carrying a specialized imaging device. They are particularly interested in the calcification pattern forming around the fracture sites. Maya sighed, setting aside the datapad she'd been using to review research notes. This is the 3rd scan today. Alara, at what point does medical documentation become voyeurism? The Viridian physician's antennae twitched, her species equivalent of a shrug. Scientific thoroughness and inappropriate curiosity often occupy neighboring territories with a poorly defined border. Despite her frustration, Maya smiled at the observation. Tiven's dry wit was one of the reasons they had developed a good working relationship over the past year. The Viridian approach to medicine was fascinatingly different from human practices, more holistic in some ways, more mechanistic in others. Let's get it over with, Maya conceded, lifting her medical gown to expose her ribcage. The bruising had faded from deep purple to yellowish green, another aspect of human healing that fascinated non-human physicians. As Tiven conducted the scan, Maya noticed additional observers had appeared at the medical bay's observation window. A delegation of Phobian scientists, their tall, willowy forms immediately recognizable, were watching the procedure with obvious interest. We have visitors, Maya noted, nodding toward the window. Tiven glanced up briefly. The Phobian Medical Consortium arrived this morning. They've brought their own imaging equipment, which they claim offers superior resolution for soft tissue analysis. And you allowed them access because Commander Voss approved their request. Apparently, the diplomatic advantages outweigh the inconvenience to you. Tiven's mandibles clicked in what Maya had learned indicated mild disapproval. though I insisted they remain outside the sterile field until you've consented to their participation." Maya considered this development. The Phobians were renowned throughout the Alliance for their advanced medical technology, particularly in regenerative medicine. Their interest suggested the case had gained significant attention beyond the immediate scientific community on Acquar. "What exactly are they hoping to learn?" she asked. Taven completed the scan before answering. "The Phobians consider your recovery rate improbable. Their species requires extensive medical intervention for injuries far less severe than yours. A fractured exoskeletal plate might incapacitate a Phobian for months, while you are already sitting upright and cognitively functional after multiple life-threatening fractures. So they think we're faking the severity of my injuries?" "Not precisely." Taven set aside the imaging device. "They acknowledge the initial trauma was severe. What they question is whether humans possess some undocumented regenerative technology that we have not shared with the Alliance." Maya couldn't help but laugh, then winced as the movement pulled at her healing ribs. "They think we're hiding some miracle technology. If we had that, we wouldn't lose so many colonists to industrial accidents on the frontier worlds." "Nevertheless, they have formally requested permission to conduct their own examination." Maya contemplated the window of observers again. Science had always been her life's passion, the pursuit of knowledge that could benefit all sentient species. If her injury could provide insights that might eventually save lives, how could she refuse? "Tell them they can examine me tomorrow," she decided. "But I want something in return. Access to their comparative physiological database for my own research." Taven's compound eyes gleamed with what might have been approval. "A fair exchange. I will convey your terms." As the Viridian physician moved away to communicate with the Phobian delegation, Maya carefully shifted to a more comfortable position. The pain in her side had diminished considerably since the accident, though deep breaths still triggered discomfort. According to Taven's estimates, she would be cleared for light duty within another 2 days. A recovery timeline that apparently seemed miraculous to most non-human observers. Commander Voss visited later that evening, bringing with him actual printed reports rather than digital files, an old military habit he maintained for sensitive information. "The preliminary findings from the submersible investigation," he explained, placing the folder on Maya's bedside table. "Thought you might want to review them before they become common knowledge around the station." Maya appreciated the gesture. "What caused the explosion?" Voss's expression tightened. "Not an explosion initially. The titanium razorback that attacked you was apparently defending territory. We found evidence of a nest site nearby. But the real failure came from substandard pressure seals in the engine compartment. When the creature struck, the seals ruptured more catastrophically than they should have." "Manufacturing defect?" "Possibly." Voss hesitated. "Or possibly deliberate sabotage. The parts in question came through 3 different supply chains before reaching Acquar. We're investigating each link." Maya absorbed this information silently. Sabotage was a disturbing possibility, while the Alliance promoted cooperation between species. Not everyone supported such close collaboration. There were isolationist factions on multiple worlds, including Earth, who viewed interspecies research with suspicion or outright hostility. "Is there any reason someone would target our specific mission?" she asked. "Nothing obvious," Voss replied. "But your work on comparative regenerative medicine has potential military applications. The ability to help soldiers recover quickly from battlefield injuries would be valuable to any species." The thought that her research might have made her a target, and by extension, cost Solon his life, sent a chill through Maya that had nothing to do with her physical condition. "I'll increase security protocols for all ongoing research," Voss continued. "And I've requested additional personnel from Earth Security Division. Until they arrive, I'd like you to restrict your activities to the main station once you're released from medical." Maya nodded her agreement, though confinement to the station would severely limit her ability to collect new specimens. What about the Phobian examination tomorrow? I've approved it with conditions, Voss said. All their equipment will be thoroughly scanned before it enters the medical bay, and I'll have security personnel present throughout the procedure. You really think the Phobians might be involved in potential sabotage? Maya asked, surprised. The willowy aliens were known throughout the Alliance for their pacifistic culture. I think taking precautions costs us nothing and might prevent future incidents, Voss replied diplomatically. Besides, their interest in your recovery seems unusually intense for a species that typically maintains emotional distance in scientific matters. After Voss departed, Maya spent hours reviewing the accident report, searching for any details that might explain the catastrophic failure that had killed Solon. The technical analysis was thorough, but ultimately inconclusive regarding deliberate tampering. The seals had failed, but whether from manufacturing defects, improper installation, or sabotage remained undetermined. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind cycling between grief for Solon, concern about potential threats, and growing unease about becoming the center of interspecies medical scrutiny. By morning, when the Phobian delegation arrived with their equipment, Maya had resolved to use the situation to her advantage. If she was to be a scientific curiosity, she would ensure the knowledge gained benefited everyone, particularly humans. The Phobian examination proved more intensive than Maya had anticipated. Their lead researcher, a willowy figure named Talus Val, brought equipment far more advanced than the station's standard medical technology. Silvery, almost liquid devices flowed over Maya's body, creating three-dimensional maps of her tissue structure down to the cellular level. Fascinating, Talus murmured, multifaceted eyes, blinking in rapid succession as data flowed across holographic displays. Your cellular regeneration rate exceeds our models by 37%. And these structures, they pointed to clusters of cells around Maya's fractured ribs, appear to be coordinating the healing response without external medical intervention. Those would be my natural immune and healing responses, Maya explained. Human bodies maintain complex self-repair systems. Without technological augmentation? Another Phobian asked, sounding skeptical. We use medical technology to support and accelerate natural processes, Maya clarified. Not replace them. The nanomed suite in my pressure suit prevented immediate death and stabilized my condition. But the actual healing is mostly biological. The Phobians exchanged glances that Maya couldn't interpret. Their species communicated partially through subtle color changes in their translucent skin, a language that human eyes could only partially perceive. We would like to take tissue samples, Talus requested, particularly from the regenerating areas around your fractures. Maya had expected this request. I've already authorized Dr. Tiven to collect and share samples, but I want your guarantee that all findings will be added to the Alliance medical database. No proprietary claims. Talus hesitated before responding. We agree to share general findings, though our analytical methods remain protected under Phobian intellectual property laws. Fair enough, Maya conceded. She understood the balance between open science and protecting technological advantages. It was a tension that existed throughout the Alliance. As the examination continued, Maya found herself shifting from being merely a subject to actively participating in the analysis. Her training as a xenophysiologist allowed her to ask informed questions about Phobian healing processes, creating a genuine scientific exchange rather than a one-sided investigation. Your species' injury response differs fundamentally from ours, Talus explained, displaying comparative scans. When a Phobian sustains similar thoracic damage, our bodies enter systemic shock. All non-essential functions shut down to preserve core consciousness. Complete healing requires artificial cellular stimulation and typically takes 60 to 80 days. Whereas humans maintain functionality and heal in weeks, Maya noted. But we lack your sensory precision and cellular efficiency in normal conditions. This observation seemed to intrigue the Phobians. Their research had apparently focused so intently on the superior human recovery rate that they had overlooked the evolutionary trade-offs involved. By the time the examination concluded, Maya had secured not only their agreement to share findings, but also access to comparative physiological data that would prove valuable for her own research. What had begun as an invasive scrutiny had transformed into a collaborative scientific exercise, exactly the kind of interspecies cooperation the Alliance was supposed to foster. As the Phobian team packed their equipment, Talus approached Maya privately. "Your resilience is remarkable, Dr. Kepler. We have much to learn from each other." "That's the foundation of the Alliance," Maya replied. "Different evolutionary paths giving us different strengths and weaknesses." "Indeed." Talus's skin rippled with color patterns that suggested thoughtfulness. "Though not all see it that way. There are those in the Bioethics Council who view human resilience as concerning." "Concerning? In what way?" "Your kind recovers from injuries that would kill most species. You adapt to hostile environments with minimal technological assistance. Some worry what such traits might mean if human expansion continues unchecked throughout the galaxy." The implication was clear, and Maya felt a surge of defensive anger. "We're explorers and scientists, not conquerors." "Of course," Talus said smoothly. "I merely thought you should be aware of the political dimensions surrounding your case. The scientific findings will be scrutinized not just for their medical value, but for their implications regarding human capability." After the Phobians departed, Maya sat alone in the medical bay, contemplating this warning. What had begun as a tragic accident and personal loss had somehow transformed into something with potential diplomatic ramifications. The thought that her broken ribs might become a political talking point seemed absurd. Yet Talus's warning suggested otherwise. Commander Voss confirmed these concerns when he visited later that day. "The station has received 16 new information requests about your condition in the past 6 hours, he reported. "Not just from scientific institutions, but from diplomatic corps across 3 sectors. "This is ridiculous," Maya protested. "People are injured and recover every day throughout the Alliance." "Not like this," Voss countered. "Not when the injury killed one species instantly, but merely incapacitated another. It's become symbolic. Maya, a visible demonstration of human resilience that some find admirable and others find threatening." Maya shook her head, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her healing tissues. "I can't control how others interpret my recovery." "No, but you can control how you document and present it." Voss sat in the chair beside her bed, his expression serious. "The Bioethics Council has formally requested that you provide a comprehensive record of your recovery process, including personal testimony about pain levels, functional limitations, and healing milestones." "They want me to keep a medical diary?" "Essentially, yes. But how you frame that information matters. This isn't just about scientific accuracy anymore. It's become a matter of interspecies perception." Maya considered this request. Her scientific training emphasized objective documentation, but she understood Voss's point about framing. The same data could tell different stories depending on how it was presented. "I'll document everything accurately," she promised. "But I won't downplay human resilience to make other species feel more comfortable. That would be scientifically dishonest." Voss nodded, seeming satisfied with this approach. "That's all I ask. Accuracy with awareness of the context." As he prepared to leave, Maya asked the question that had been troubling her since the Phobian examination. "Do you think there are really factions that see humans as a threat because of our physical resilience?" Voss paused in the doorway. "There are always those who fear difference, Maya, especially when that difference might confer advantage." His expression softened slightly. "But there are many more who see human resilience as an asset to the Alliance, a complementary strength to the Viridian analytical precision or phobian sensory capabilities. After he departed, Maya began the documentation process the council had requested. As both subject and scientist, she recorded detailed observations about her pain levels, decreasing steadily, mobility, improving daily, and physiological markers, all trending toward normal parameters. She included both objective measurements and subjective experiences, creating a comprehensive record of human recovery from severe trauma. What she didn't record were her growing concerns about the political dimensions of her case, or her determination to ensure that Solon's death led to greater understanding rather than increased division between species. Those thoughts remained private, at least for now. 6 days after the accident, Dr. Taven cleared Maya for light duty. Her ribs were still healing, but the bone had knitted sufficiently to allow careful movement without risk of further damage. The bruising had faded to yellow-green patches, and her lung function had returned to nearly normal capacity. "Your recovery continues to exceed standard projections," Taven noted as she reviewed the latest scans. "The Bioethics Council has requested weekly updates for the next month." Maya, dressed in a station uniform for the first time since the accident, nodded her acknowledgement. "They'll receive them, but I'm returning to my research immediately." "With restrictions," Taven reminded her. "No diving, no strenuous physical activity, and daily check-ins with medical." "Understood." Maya was already mentally cataloging the laboratory work she could accomplish without field collection. "Has there been any update on the submersible investigation?" Taven's antennae flattened slightly, a sign of discomfort. "I believe Commander Voss wishes to brief you personally on that matter." Maya recognized the deflection but didn't press further. Whatever the investigation had uncovered, she would learn soon enough. For now, returning to some semblance of normal routine took priority. As she left the medical bay, Maya was struck by the changed atmosphere in the station. Colleagues who had previously treated her with casual professionalism now watched her with curious, sometimes wary expressions. Conversations paused when she entered rooms, then resumed with forced normalcy. Her recovery, it seemed, had transformed her from colleague to living specimen in the eyes of many. Rather than heading directly to her laboratory, Maya made a detour to the Memorial Garden, a small chamber near the station's central dome, where plants from various worlds grew together in carefully maintained conditions. A holographic marker now floated among the vegetation, displaying Solon's image and scientific contributions. Maya stood before it silently, paying respects to her friend and colleague. The unfairness of their different fates still weighed heavily on her. Why had the same traumatic event taken his life while merely injuring her? The scientific explanation involved different evolutionary paths and physiological structures, but the emotional question remained unanswerable. "He valued your partnership greatly," a voice said behind her. Maya turned to find Naren, another Aquarian scientist who had worked closely with Solon. His gill filaments rippled with the subtle blue patterns that indicated deep emotion. "I valued his," Maya replied simply. "The Aquarian Science Ministry has requested all his research data," Naren continued, "including your collaborative projects on regenerative biology." Maya nodded. "Of course. I'll prepare everything for transfer. His family should have full access to his work." "They also asked about your recovery documentation," Naren added, his multifaceted eyes studying her with unreadable intensity. "It has created considerable interest on our homeworld." "So I've heard." Maya maintained a neutral tone, though her frustration at becoming a galactic curiosity was growing. "I hope the information proves scientifically valuable." Naren's gill filaments shifted to a pattern Maya couldn't interpret. "It already has. Our adaptive medicine division is reconsidering several fundamental assumptions about trauma response based on your case." This caught Maya's attention. "Really? What specifically?" "The traditional Aquarian approach emphasizes system protection over repair, shutting down damaged areas to prevent cascade failure. Your body's ability to maintain function while simultaneously repairing critical damage suggests alternative pathways we hadn't considered viable. For the first time since the accident, Maya felt a spark of genuine scientific excitement. If her injury and recovery could lead to medical advances for other species, perhaps some meaning could be salvaged from the tragedy. "I'd be interested in consulting on that research," she offered. "Comparative approaches might yield insights for both our species." Naren's color patterns shifted to what Maya recognized as cautious interest. "I will convey your offer to the ministry, though I should note that some conservative factions might resist such collaboration. Because acknowledging that humans possess superior regenerative capabilities challenges certain cultural perspectives on evolutionary advancement." Maya suppressed a sigh. Politics again, intruding on what should be purely scientific inquiry. "The facts exist regardless of whether they're acknowledged. Naren, my ribs are healing. Solon is dead. Those realities don't change based on cultural perspectives." "True," Naren conceded. "But how those facts are interpreted and applied does depend on cultural context. Remember that on Akwar, science and spirituality remain more closely integrated than on Earth." This reminder tempered Maya's frustration somewhat. Different species approach knowledge through different cultural frameworks, a fundamental challenge of the Alliance since its formation. Humans tended to separate empirical science from philosophical or spiritual beliefs, while many other species viewed these domains as inherently interconnected. "I respect your cultural framework," Maya said carefully, "and I hope we can find common ground in seeking knowledge that benefits all our peoples." Naren's gill filaments rippled in what appeared to be agreement, and they parted with formal cordiality. But as Maya finally made her way to her laboratory, she couldn't shake the sense that her personal trauma had become entangled in much larger interspecies dynamics, and that the ripple effects might extend far beyond Akwar's oceans. 2 weeks after the accident, Maya found herself standing before the full Bioethics Council, a diverse assembly of representatives from all major Alliance species. The council chamber, located in the station's administrative section, had been reconfigured to accommodate the various physiological needs of its members: elevated perches for the avian Altarians, aquatic interfaces for the Aquarians, and specialized atmospheric pockets for species requiring different gas mixtures. Maya's formal presentation on her recovery process had just concluded, and now she faced questions from council members whose motivations ranged from genuine scientific curiosity to thinly veiled political agendas. "Your documentation indicates you resumed light research duties only 6 days after sustaining injuries that would have been fatal to at least 3 known sentient species," noted Councillor Zathi, a Viridian representative whose iridescent exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights. "Yet you claim no exceptional regenerative technology was employed beyond standard medical intervention." "That is correct," Maya confirmed, maintaining a professional tone despite having answered similar questions repeatedly over the past weeks. "Human physiology naturally prioritizes survival and functional recovery. Our evolutionary history on Earth, a high-gravity planet with diverse environmental hazards, selected for robust repair mechanisms." "But surely," interjected Councillor Fenn, an Aquarian whose gill filaments flickered with skepticism, "such rapid recovery from multiple bone fractures and organ damage exceeds natural biological processes." Maya resisted the urge to sigh. The circular nature of these inquiries was becoming tedious. "The nanomed suite in my pressure suit provided immediate stabilization, and Dr. Tiven's treatments accelerated natural healing processes. But the fundamental recovery capability exists in baseline human biology. A capability that seems remarkably convenient for a species currently expanding its presence throughout Alliance territories," observed Councillor Dreth, a Phobian known for his isolationist views. The implication was clear, and Maya felt her patience wearing thin. Commander Voss, seated among the observers, caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head, a warning to maintain diplomatic composure. "Counselor," Maya replied carefully, "human physiological traits evolved long before we developed interstellar travel or joined the Alliance. Our recovery capabilities are no more convenient than Viridian analytical processing speeds or Phobian sensory perception. They are simply the result of different evolutionary pressures." Before Dreth could respond, Counselor Talus Val, the same Phobian who had conducted Maya's examination, intervened. "Perhaps we might focus on the scientific implications rather than speculative interpretations. Dr. Kepler has provided unprecedented access to her recovery data, offering valuable comparative insights for all Alliance medicine." Maya shot Talus a grateful glance. At least some council members recognized the scientific value of her case beyond political posturing. "I concur," added Councillor Nima, an Altarian whose feathered crest rippled with iridescent colors as she spoke. The detailed cellular regeneration patterns documented in Dr. Kepler's case suggest potential cross-species applications, particularly for emergency medicine in deep space where medical facilities may be limited. The discussion shifted toward more productive scientific territory for a time, with various specialists questioning Maya about specific aspects of human healing processes. She answered each query thoroughly, drawing on both her personal experience and professional knowledge as a xenophysiologist. Just as the session seemed to be concluding on a positive note, the chamber doors slid open to admit a late arrival, a tall, imposing figure that Maya recognized immediately, despite having never met him in person. Director Halverson of the Earth Diplomatic Corps moved with the confident precision of someone accustomed to commanding attention, his silver-streaked dark hair and tailored uniform projecting authority. "My apologies for the interruption," Halverson announced, his deep voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "I was delayed by communications with Earth Central. I trust Dr. Kepler's presentation has been informative." An undercurrent of tension rippled through the assembled council members. Halverson's presence, unexpected and unannounced, suggested Earth authorities were taking a more direct interest in the proceedings than previously indicated. Council Chair Taven acknowledged him with a formal gesture. "Director Halverson, we welcome Earth's interest in these proceedings. Dr. Kepler has indeed provided valuable insights into human recovery processes." "Excellent!" Halverson took a seat among the Earth delegation, his gaze briefly meeting Maya's, with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. Warning, perhaps, or calculation. "I look forward to reviewing the complete record." The dynamic in the chamber had shifted palpably with Halverson's arrival. Several council members who had been openly skeptical of Maya's account now maintained diplomatic silence, while others seemed more emboldened in their questioning. "Before we conclude," Councillor Dreth said, addressing Maya directly, "I must ask about the experimental regeneration protocols you were researching with the late Dr. Solon. Were any of these experimental treatments applied during your recovery?" The question caught Maya off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because it mischaracterized her research so fundamentally. "Counselor, my collaborative work with Dr. Solon focused on comparative physiological responses to environmental pressures, not regenerative medicine. No experimental protocols were involved in my treatment. Yet your research notes, which were submitted as context for this inquiry, contain multiple references to accelerated tissue regeneration in marine specimens," Dreth persisted. Maya felt a flash of anger at the deliberate misrepresentation of her work. "Those references pertain to naturally occurring regeneration in aquarian deep-sea organisms, which Dr. Solon and I were documenting for purely scientific purposes. Nothing in our research was applied to my medical treatment." Director Halverson leaned forward slightly. "I believe the Council has Dr. Taven's complete medical logs regarding Dr. Kepler's treatment. Is there any indication of experimental procedures in those records?" The Council Chair's antennae twitched, a sign of mild irritation at having her professional integrity questioned, even indirectly. The medical records are comprehensive and transparent. Director. Standard Alliance protocols were followed, with all treatments documented according to regulatory requirements. Then, perhaps, Halverson suggested smoothly, we can put this particular line of questioning to rest and focus on the considerable scientific value of Dr. Kepler's case. The subtle power play wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. Earth's representative had effectively shut down the more politically charged inquiries, while appearing reasonable and focused on scientific cooperation. A diplomatic maneuver that Maya might have appreciated under different circumstances. As the session finally concluded, Maya found herself emotionally and physically exhausted. The healing ribs in her side ached from standing throughout the lengthy presentation, and the political undercurrents had been more draining than she'd anticipated. Commander Voss approached as she gathered her materials. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "Did I? It felt like defending myself against accusations that shouldn't exist in the first place." "Welcome to interspecies politics," Voss replied, with a grim smile. "Scientific fact is rarely enough when cultural perspectives and power dynamics enter the equation." Director Halverson joined them before Maya could respond. Up close, he cut an even more imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of physical presence that dominated spaces without effort. "Dr. Kepler," he greeted her, extending a hand. "Impressive presentation. Your clarity in explaining complex physiological processes to a diverse audience is commendable." Maya accepted the handshake with professional courtesy, though something about Halverson's calculated charm set her on edge. "Thank you, Director. Though I hadn't expected Earth Diplomatic Corps to take such direct interest in my case. A human scientist survives an injury that kills her Aquarian colleague, becomes the center of interspecies medical scrutiny, and faces thinly veiled accusations of concealing advanced technology." Halverson raised an eyebrow. "That falls squarely within diplomatic interests, Doctor, particularly when it involves one of our leading xenophysiologists." The compliment felt strategic rather than genuine, but Maya acknowledged it with a nod. "I'm simply trying to ensure the scientific record is accurate." "Of course," Halverson agreed. "And Earth Central appreciates your transparency, though in future sessions, it might be advisable to coordinate your responses with diplomatic staff beforehand." The suggestion, delivered casually, but with unmistakable authority, rankled Maya's scientific independence. "My responses were factually accurate, Director." "Facts exist in context, Dr. Kepler," Halverson replied smoothly. "How they're presented can impact interspecies relations as significantly as the facts themselves." Commander Voss intervened, perhaps sensing Maya's growing irritation. "I believe Dr. Kepler has satisfied all official requirements for today. Director, she's still recovering and should rest." Halvorsen inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Of course. We can continue this discussion at a more convenient time. My office will contact you to arrange a private briefing, Dr. Kepler." As he departed with the practiced ease of a career diplomat, Maya turned to Voss with a questioning look. "Private briefing? Since when does my medical condition require diplomatic briefings?" "Since it became politically significant," Voss answered simply. "Halverson isn't here by chance. Maya, Earth Central sent him specifically because of how your case is being perceived across Alliance species." "And how exactly is it being perceived?" Voss glanced around the now emptying council chamber before responding. "There are factions interpreting human physiological resilience as evidence supporting expansion restrictions. The argument goes that species with superior recovery capabilities have evolutionary advantages that could lead to domination of shared territories." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "That's absurd. Physiological differences exist across all Alliance species, each with their own advantages and limitations. The entire point of the alliance is to complement these differences. You and I know that, Voss agreed. But fear rarely responds to rational argument, and there are political entities within multiple alliance governments who find anti-human sentiment useful for their own agendas. The implications were troubling. What had begun as a personal tragedy and scientific curiosity had somehow transformed into a focal point for interspecies political tensions. Maya's broken ribs, now well on their way to healing, had become symbolic of much larger concerns about human capabilities and intentions within the alliance framework. "So what happens now?" she asked. "You continue your recovery and your research," Voss advised. "Document everything meticulously, maintain scientific objectivity, and," he added with a slight grimace, "probably prepare for more political interest than you'd prefer." As they left the council chamber, Maya found herself contemplating how drastically her professional focus had shifted since the accident. Rather than studying alien marine biology, she had become a subject of study herself, a human specimen whose recovery process had implications extending far beyond medicine into the complex terrain of interspecies relations. The realization was both unsettling and clarifying. If her case had become symbolic in alliance politics, then she had a responsibility to ensure it symbolized the right things: scientific transparency, interspecies cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge that benefited all sentient beings. Anything less would dishonor Solon's memory and the collaborative work they had valued. With renewed determination, Maya resolved to take control of the narrative surrounding her recovery, not through political maneuvering, but through rigorous science and open communication across species boundaries. It would be challenging, particularly with figures like Director Halverson attempting to shape the diplomatic dimensions. But her scientific integrity demanded nothing less. The following weeks brought a new routine for Maya, one that balanced her ongoing recovery with resumed research duties and the continuing scrutiny of her case. Her ribs had healed remarkably well, with only occasional twinges of discomfort during strenuous movement. Dr. Tiven had pronounced her recovery proceeding at expected human parameters, which translated to astonishingly fast by most alliance species standards. Maya had been cleared to resume modified fieldwork, though deep-water diving remained restricted until her 6-week evaluation. Instead, she focused on laboratory analysis of specimens collected by other team members and the documentation of her research with Solon for transfer to the Aquarian Science Ministry. One morning, as she carefully cataloged tissue samples from a particularly interesting deep-sea organism, the laboratory door slid open to admit an unexpected visitor, Naren, Solon's Aquarian colleague who had spoken with her in the memorial garden. "Dr. Kepler," he greeted her, gill filaments rippling in what she recognized as formal respect. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." "Not at all," Maya replied, setting aside her equipment. "What can I do for you?" Naren moved closer, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the laboratory lights in prismatic patterns. "I've been assigned to continue Dr. Solon's research line," he explained. "The ministry believes his work should not end with his passing." "I agree completely," Maya said, feeling a pang of grief at the mention of her friend, but appreciating the practical Aquarian approach to loss. Honor the dead by continuing their contributions. "I've prepared comprehensive data packages of all our collaborative projects." "Yes, I've received those." Naren's gill filaments shifted to a pattern indicating hesitation. "But there are gaps in the documentation, particularly regarding the regenerative properties of the luminous abyss coral you were collecting when the accident occurred." Maya frowned slightly. "There shouldn't be gaps. We documented all our findings according to Alliance scientific protocols." "The official documentation is complete," Naren acknowledged. "But Solon's personal research notes reference additional observations that don't appear in the shared database." This was unexpected. Maya and Solon had maintained a transparent research partnership, sharing all significant findings. The idea that he might have kept certain observations private seemed out of character. "What kind of observations?" she asked. Naren's color patterns shifted to something Maya couldn't quite interpret. Caution, perhaps, or uncertainty. His notes suggest the coral's cellular repair mechanisms might have applications beyond their native environment. He mentions cross-species compatibility potential several times, with specific reference to vertebrate tissue structures. The implications were immediately clear to Maya. If Solon had identified components in the coral that could potentially accelerate healing in vertebrate species, including humans, it would represent a significant breakthrough in regenerative medicine. But it would also raise complex questions about why he hadn't shared these findings through official channels. "I wasn't aware of these observations," Maya said carefully. "Solon and I discussed all our major findings." Perhaps he was still developing his hypothesis, Naren suggested. "The last entry was dated 3 days before your accident." A troubling thought occurred to Maya. "Have you shared this information with the Bioethics Council?" "Not yet." Naren's gill filaments flattened against his neck, a sign of discomfort. "Given the current sensitivity surrounding your recovery, I thought it prudent to speak with you first." Maya appreciated his discretion. If the council learned that Solon had been researching potential regenerative applications just before the accident that killed him, while Maya survived, it would fuel the very suspicions that Director Halverson and Commander Voss had warned about. "I'd like to review these notes," she said. "If Solon was onto something significant, we should continue the research, but through proper channels with full transparency." Naren agreed, transferring the relevant files to Maya's secure research terminal. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated. "There is one other matter. Dr. Kepler, the Aquarian representatives on the Bioethics Council have requested permission to observe your final recovery evaluation next week." Maya suppressed a sigh. 6 weeks after the accident, her case continued to attract disproportionate attention. Standard medical privacy protocols would normally prevent such observation. "Yes," Naren acknowledged. "But given the comparative physiological data your case provides, exceptions could be justified on scientific grounds." "If Dr. Tiven approves and the proper confidentiality agreements are in place, I won't object," Maya decided. Her personal discomfort with the scrutiny was outweighed by the potential scientific value. After Naren departed, Maya turned to Solon's private research notes with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The files contain detailed observations of cellular responses in the luminous abyss coral, focusing particularly on its remarkable ability to repair structural damage caused by predators or environmental stress. Solon had indeed noted potential cross-species applications, with several references to vertebrate tissue compatibility. His hypotheses were preliminary but intriguing, suggesting that certain compounds in the coral might enhance natural healing processes across diverse biological systems. Most significantly, his final entry indicated plans to discuss these findings with Maya after their next specimen collection dive, the very mission that had ended in tragedy. Maya sat back, processing this information. There was nothing in Solon's notes to suggest anything improper or unethical. Just a scientist following a promising research direction that he hadn't yet fully developed. But in the current political climate, these notes could be misinterpreted as evidence supporting the conspiracy theories about human regenerative capabilities. After careful consideration, Maya documented her discovery of Solon's private research notes in her official records, adding context, explaining the preliminary nature of his observations and the planned discussion that never occurred due to the accident. Transparency, she believed, remained the best approach, even when it might invite unwelcome scrutiny. This decision proved prescient when, 2 days later, she received a formal summons to meet with Director Halverson in his temporary office aboard the station. The diplomatic section of the facility, typically quiet, had become a hub of activity since Halverson's arrival with his staff. "Dr. Kepler," he greeted her as she entered, rising from behind a desk cluttered with datapads and holographic displays. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Maya took the offered seat, noting the security protocols active around the office. Sound-dampening fields and electromagnetic shields that prevented external monitoring. Whatever Halverson wished to discuss, he clearly wanted it to remain private. "I understand you've discovered some interesting research notes from your late colleague," he began, without preamble. Maya wasn't surprised that he knew. The diplomatic corps maintained extensive information networks throughout Alliance facilities. Yes, Dr. Solon was investigating potential regenerative properties in the luminous abyss coral. I've added his preliminary findings to our official research records. Halvorsen studied her with calculated intensity. A transparent approach, though some might question the timing of this discovery, given the ongoing interest in your recovery. "The timing is coincidental," Maya stated firmly. "And I've documented everything according to Alliance scientific protocols." "Of course." Halverson's tone suggested neither belief nor disbelief, merely assessment. "You should know that Earth Central is taking an increased interest in your situation. Dr. Kepler, your case has implications beyond individual medical curiosity." "So Commander Voss informed me." "Voss sees the military and security dimensions," Halverson acknowledged. "My concern is broader. How your recovery is shaping perceptions of humans throughout the Alliance. There are factions using your case to argue for restrictions on human expansion into frontier systems." Maya had heard similar concerns, but having them confirmed by Earth's senior diplomatic representative lent them new weight. "On what grounds? That we recover from injuries too efficiently?" "Essentially, yes." Halverson activated a holographic display showing news and information feeds from various Alliance worlds. Headlines and commentary scrolled past, many featuring Maya's name or image, alongside terms like superior regeneration, evolutionary advantage, and expansion concerns. "The narrative being constructed," Halverson continued, "is that humans possess unprecedented physiological resilience that, combined with our adaptability and technological development, creates an imbalance in the Alliance's carefully maintained equilibrium between species." Maya scanned the displayed information with growing concern. "This is ridiculous. Every species has evolved different advantages and limitations. That's the entire premise of the Alliance. Complementary differences creating stronger collective capabilities than any single species could achieve alone." "A premise that some now question," Halverson replied, "particularly among species with naturally slower regenerative capabilities. Your recovery, remarkable by any standard, has become symbolic of larger anxieties about human potential." "What does Earth Central expect me to do about these perceptions?" Maya asked, already suspecting the answer. Halvorsen deactivated the display before responding. "Continue your scientific documentation with one adjustment. Emphasize the limitations and costs of human recovery processes. The pain, the energy expenditure, the lengthy rehabilitation. Balance the narrative. You're asking me to selectively present my experience to serve diplomatic goals. I'm asking you to present the complete truth, including aspects that might be overlooked in clinical documentation," Halverson corrected. "Your recovery wasn't painless or instantaneous. Making that reality clear serves both scientific accuracy and diplomatic interests." Maya considered his request. Highlighting the challenges of her recovery wouldn't require falsifying data. She had indeed experienced significant pain and functional limitations during the healing process. But allowing diplomatic considerations to influence her scientific reporting crossed a boundary she had always maintained between politics and research. "I'll continue documenting my complete experience," she said finally. including both the remarkable aspects of human recovery and its limitations. But I won't tailor my scientific reporting to serve political narratives, either those that exaggerate human capabilities or those that minimize them. Halvorson's expression remained neutral, though Maya sensed he had expected this response. Fair enough, Doctor. Scientific integrity is precisely why your testimony carries weight in this matter. He paused, then added, There is one other issue we should discuss: the investigation into the submersible accident. The shift in topic caught Maya's attention. Has there been a conclusive finding? Not officially. Halvorson's tone suggested the distinction was significant. The engineering division continues to investigate potential manufacturing defects in the pressure seals. But unofficial analysis suggests deliberate tampering cannot be ruled out. Maya felt a chill at this confirmation of her earlier suspicions. Sabotage? Possibly. Halvorson activated a different display, showing technical schematics of the submersible's engine compartment. The specific pattern of seal failure indicates potential micro-incisions consistent with specialized cutting tools, damage that would only become catastrophic under pressure stress. Who would target our research? Maya asked. Though several possibilities immediately came to mind. That remains unclear, Halvorson admitted. But I should inform you that 3 days before your accident, an unregistered communication was detected, leaving the station on a frequency typically used by isolationist coalition operatives. The Isolationist Coalition, a loose alliance of extremist factions from multiple species who oppose the integrated approach of the alliance. They advocated for strict territorial boundaries and minimal interaction between different evolutionary lineages, viewing interspecies collaboration as contamination of pure developmental paths. You think isolationists sabotaged our submersible? Maya asked, the implications horrifying. That Solon died because extremists wanted to prevent our research? It's one possibility being investigated, Halvorson replied cautiously. Though I should note that if sabotage did occur, the perpetrators might not have intended lethal consequences, merely equipment failure that would delay your work. The distinction offered little comfort, whether intended or not. Solon was dead, and Maya's life had been dramatically altered. If ideological extremism had caused the accident, it added a dimension of tragedy that made her scientific curiosity seem almost trivial by comparison. Why tell me this now? She asked. The investigation isn't complete. Halvorson regarded her steadily. Because you should understand the full context surrounding your case. Dr. Kepler, the scrutiny of your recovery isn't merely scientific curiosity. It's part of larger political currents flowing through the alliance. Currents that might have already had lethal consequences. The warning was clear. Maya's situation had dimensions beyond her personal experience or scientific documentation, whether she wished it or not. Her broken ribs and remarkable recovery had become entangled with interspecies politics, extremist ideologies, and the complex balance of power within the alliance. As she left Halvorson's office, Maya felt the weight of this knowledge pressing against her healing ribs. The accident that had taken Solon's life, and nearly her own, might not have been random misfortune but targeted action. And her recovery, a natural biological process she had taken for granted, had implications that extended far beyond medical science. The realization was both sobering and clarifying. If her case had indeed become symbolic in these larger conflicts, then how she presented her experience mattered more than she had initially recognized. Not because she should distort the truth to serve political agendas, but because the truth itself existed in context, and that context now included potential extremist violence and interspecies fear. With her final medical evaluation approaching, the official conclusion of her recovery documentation, Maya resolved to present her experience with complete accuracy while remaining mindful of its wider implications. She would neither exaggerate human resilience nor downplay it, but instead emphasize the universal aspects of healing that transcended species boundaries. It was, she reflected, what Solon would have wanted. Science in service of understanding, not division. The day of Maya's final medical evaluation arrived with unexpected complications. The station's AI system, Hermes, experienced a cascade failure in its primary processing nodes, causing disruptions throughout the facility. Environmental controls fluctuated, communication systems operated intermittently, and automated laboratory protocols required manual oversight. System diagnostics indicate a compatibility error in the latest security update, reported the technical officer, a harried-looking specialist named Torres. We're implementing containment protocols, but full restoration will take approximately 6 hours. Commander Voss had called an emergency staff meeting to address the situation. Priority systems, life support, structural integrity, and essential communications remain functional on backup protocols. He informed the assembled team leaders. All non-critical operations should be suspended until system stability is confirmed. Maya, who had been preparing for her medical evaluation when the disruption began, raised the obvious question. What about the Bioethics Council observation session? Several representatives have already arrived. Voss's expression tightened slightly. Dr. Tiven will make that determination based on medical priorities. If the evaluation can proceed safely without AI assistance, it may continue as scheduled. As the meeting concluded and staff dispersed to their emergency stations, Maya made her way to the medical bay, where Tiven was already reconfiguring equipment for manual operation. The evaluation will proceed, the Viridian physician announced without preamble, her mandibles clicking with what Maya recognized as irritation at the disruption. The Bioethics Council representatives are most insistent. Maya nodded, unsurprised. After 6 weeks of intense interest in her case, the council would not be easily dissuaded by technical difficulties. Do you need assistance setting up the manual protocols? That would be helpful, Tiven acknowledged. The imaging system requires calibration without AI assistance. Your knowledge of human physiology would ensure accurate baseline parameters. Together, they prepared the medical bay for the evaluation, a comprehensive assessment of Maya's recovery that would officially conclude the documentation of her case. The process would include detailed tissue scans, mobility assessments, and comparative analysis against both pre-injury baselines and standard human recovery metrics. As they worked, Maya noticed Tiven's typically precise movements seemed hurried, almost agitated. Is something wrong beyond the system failure? She asked quietly. The Viridian's antennae twitched, a sign of internal conflict. The timing of this AI disruption is statistically improbable, she said after a moment, coming precisely when interspecies observation of human recovery metrics is scheduled. The implication was clear, and it aligned with concerns Halverson had raised about potential sabotage. You think it's deliberate interference? I lack sufficient evidence to make such a claim, Tiven replied carefully. But, as a scientist, I note the correlation and consider causal relationships. Before Maya could respond, the medical bay doors slid open to admit the Bioethics Council observers, a smaller group than the full council, but still representing diverse alliance species. Talus Val led the Phobian contingent, while Councillor Fenn represented Aquarian interests. The Earth representative was not Halverson, as Maya had expected, but a medical specialist named Dr. Eliza Chen, whose reputation in comparative physiology was well established. We understand there are technical difficulties, Talus stated, multifaceted eyes, taking in the manually configured equipment. If the evaluation cannot proceed with full scientific rigor, we should reschedule. The essential diagnostic capabilities remain functional, Tiven assured them. Manual operation introduces minimal variance within acceptable parameters. Acceptable to whom? Councillor Fenn asked. Gill filaments, rippling with skepticism. The purpose of this observation is to document recovery metrics with precision that satisfies all council members. Maya, sensing the diplomatic impasse forming, intervened. The current setup allows for comprehensive tissue evaluation with accuracy comparable to AI-assisted procedures. Dr. Tiven has extensive experience with manual diagnostic protocols, and Dr. Kepler's expertise in comparative physiology ensures proper calibration for human parameters, added Dr. Chen, speaking for the first time. I've reviewed the equipment configuration and find it scientifically sound. This endorsement from Earth's representative seemed to mollify the other observers, and the evaluation proceeded as planned. Tiven conducted each diagnostic procedure with methodical precision, documenting tissue regeneration, bone density, pulmonary function, and metabolic indicators. Remarkable, Tallis murmured as the rib cage imaging displayed on the main screen. Complete structural integrity restored in only 6 weeks. Our medical models predicted minimum 12-week recovery for comparable trauma. Human bone regeneration accelerates in response to functional stress, Dr. Chen explained. Unlike some species that require immobilization for healing, controlled movement actually enhances human recovery in many cases. A counterintuitive approach, Counselor Fenn noted, multifaceted eyes, studying the images with scientific interest. Aquarian medicine prioritizes complete rest for injured systems. Different evolutionary solutions to the same fundamental problem, Maya suggested, each with advantages and limitations suited to our respective environments. This framing, emphasizing complementary differences rather than competitive advantages, seemed to resonate with the observers. The evaluation continued with decreasing tension, becoming more collaborative as representatives asked thoughtful questions about specific aspects of human healing processes. As Tiven completed the final assessments, the medical bay doors slid open again, this time admitting Commander Voss, whose expression suggested urgent matters. Dr. Tiven, he addressed the physician directly. Your presence is required in emergency medical. We have multiple injuries from a pressure valve failure in Section 7. Tiven immediately began shutting down the diagnostic equipment. How severe? 2 critical, 5 moderate, Voss reported. Primarily burn trauma and concussive injuries. I'll prepare burn treatment protocols, Tiven responded, already moving toward the supply cabinets. Maya stepped forward. I can assist. My medical training includes emergency response. Tiven paused, compound eyes shifting toward the council observers. The evaluation is complete enough for our purposes, Tallis Val interjected. Dr. Kepler's recovery is clearly progressing within expected parameters. The Council can review the collected data without further procedures. With the observer's acknowledgement, Maya and Tiven quickly gathered emergency medical supplies and followed Voss toward the affected section. As they hurried through the corridors, Maya noted that the station's environmental systems were still fluctuating, temperature variations and intermittent lighting, suggesting the AI malfunction remained unresolved. What happened? She asked Voss. Pressure regulation failed in the hydroponics section, he explained grimly. The manual override engaged too late to prevent rupture. We have multiple personnel with steam burns, and 2 trapped behind a collapsed partition. When they reached the scene, Maya was struck by the chaos. Emergency responders working to stabilize the environment, while medical technicians attended to the injured. The air was thick with vapor and the acrid smell of burned circuitry. Tiven immediately took charge of the medical response, directing personnel with the efficient precision that characterized Viridian crisis management. Dr. Kepler, attend to the burns while I assess the trapped personnel. Maya moved quickly to the nearest injured technician, a young woman with angry red burns covering her left arm and side. The nanomed injector in Maya's medical kit whirred as it analyzed the injury and calibrated treatment. This will stabilize the tissue and manage pain, Maya explained as she applied the device. Try to remain still while it works. The technician nodded, teeth gritted against obvious pain. The system just failed without warning, she gasped. Pressure readings were normal 1 minute, critical the next. Maya administered similar treatment to 3 other burn victims, while emergency teams worked to clear the collapsed partition, blocking access to the 2 trapped personnel. The structure had failed when superheated steam caused rapid expansion of support materials, creating a dangerous tangle of metal and composite debris. "We can't risk further structural damage with cutting tools," the engineering team leader reported. "The surrounding frame shows microfractures that could propagate under stress." Taven's mandibles clicked in concern. "Life signs are weakening for both trapped personnel. Extraction must occur within 20 minutes for optimal survival probability." Maya studied the barrier, noting a narrow gap near the floor, not large enough for an adult human, but potentially navigable by someone with a more flexible physiology. "Dr. Taven, could you access the trapped personnel through that opening?" The Viridian assessed the gap with compound eyes, designed for precise spatial calculation. "Negative. My exoskeletal structure lacks sufficient compression capability." "What about remote medical deployment?" Voss suggested. "If we can't reach them physically." "The AI failure has disabled remote systems," Taven reminded him. "Manual delivery is the only option." A solution formed in Maya's mind. Unorthodox but potentially effective. The medical nanobots in the emergency kits can be recalibrated for targeted deployment through that gap. They could stabilize the trapped personnel until structural reinforcement arrives. Taven's antennae twitched with interest. "Possible, but the recalibration requires precise adjustments to recognition parameters. Without AI assistance?" "I can do it manually," Maya insisted. "My research with Solon on cellular recognition patterns is directly applicable," while the engineering team continued working on structural reinforcement. Maya and Taven quickly modified the nanomed devices, recalibrating their targeting systems to identify and treat trauma without direct operator guidance. The process required Maya to draw on both her scientific expertise and the practical medical knowledge she had gained during her own recovery. "Delivery system ready," she announced after intensive minutes of reprogramming. "If we can position it just inside that gap, the nanobots should navigate to the injured personnel autonomously." Taven examined Maya's modifications with professional assessment. "The calibration appears correct, though without AI verification, certainty is reduced." "It's their best chance," Voss stated, making the command decision. "Proceed, Dr. Kepler." Maya carefully positioned the modified device at the narrow opening, activating the deployment sequence. The nanobots, microscopic medical units designed to identify and treat trauma, flowed through the gap like silvery liquid, disappearing into the damaged compartment beyond. "Monitoring receiver active," Taven reported, watching data flow across a portable display. "Nanobots have reached first patient, initiating assessment, treatment protocols engaging." The tense minutes that followed seemed to stretch endlessly as the medical team monitored the nanobots' progress. The remote data showed encouraging signs, stabilizing vital signs for both trapped personnel as the tiny machines administered targeted treatment for shock, bleeding, and respiratory distress. "Engineering team reports structural reinforcement in place," Voss announced finally. "Cutting operations can begin safely." As rescue operations proceeded with new urgency, Maya found herself reflecting on the strange parallels to her own accident. Once again, technology and biology had combined to preserve life in crisis. Nanobots extending medical care beyond physical limitations, just as her own body's natural resilience had kept her alive when the submersible failed. The difference, she realized, was in how these capabilities were perceived. Her human recovery had become a source of political tension and interspecies anxiety, while the nanobot intervention represented collaborative technology that transcended species limitations, different approaches to the same fundamental goal of preserving life. When the trapped personnel were finally extracted, injured but stable thanks to the emergency intervention, Maya helped transfer them to proper medical care. The crisis had been managed without fatalities, though several injuries would require extended treatment. As the emergency response transitioned to recovery operations, Maya noticed that the council observers had arrived at the scene, apparently drawn by reports of the innovative medical intervention. Talus Val and Counselor Fenn observed the aftermath with scientific interest, while Dr. Chen assisted with treating minor injuries. "Impressive adaptation of medical technology," Talus noted, approaching Maya as she completed documentation of the emergency procedures. "The recalibration of nanobots without AI assistance demonstrates remarkable problem-solving capacity." "Necessity drives innovation," Maya replied simply. "The technical skills came from my research with Solon. This success belongs to his legacy as much as anyone." Counselor Fenn's gill filaments rippled in what Maya recognized as thoughtful consideration. "Perhaps there is something to learn from the human approach to crisis. Your species seems particularly adept at improvising solutions under pressure." The observation, delivered without the usual undercurrent of suspicion, suggested a potential shift in perspective, at least from this particular Aquarian representative. Before Maya could respond, however, Commander Voss approached with urgent purpose. "Dr. Kepler, we've identified the source of the AI malfunction," he said, his voice low enough that only she and the nearby council members could hear. It wasn't a compatibility error with the security update. The system was deliberately compromised. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's fluctuating environmental controls. "Sabotage again?" "Confirmed this time," Voss replied grimly. "Security identified an unauthorized access node, hidden in the medical database, specifically in the files documenting your recovery case." The implications were immediate and disturbing. Someone had used the intense interest in Maya's medical data as cover to insert malicious code into the station's systems. Code designed to trigger precisely when the Bioethics Council was conducting its final observation of her recovery. "Was the pressure valve failure also deliberate?" she asked, dreading the answer. "Unknown at this time," Voss admitted. "But the timing suggests a coordinated attempt to create maximum disruption." Talus Val, who had been listening with increasing concern, interjected quietly. "This information should be shared with the full council immediately. If someone is targeting this research station, or Dr. Kepler specifically, it represents a serious security breach with diplomatic implications." "I agree," Voss nodded. "Security protocols have been elevated station-wide, and Director Halverson has been notified. He's calling an emergency session once the immediate technical crisis is resolved." As Voss departed to continue managing the station's response, Maya found herself confronting a troubling realization. The accident that had killed Solon, her subsequent recovery that attracted such intense scrutiny, and now this sabotage attempt, all might be connected through some hidden agenda that remained obscure. Dr. Chen joined them, having completed her assistance with the injured. "I've been reviewing the medical intervention you implemented, Dr. Kepler. The nanobot recalibration showed exceptional insight into cross-species application. Where did you develop that expertise?" "It builds on research Dr. Solon and I were conducting," Maya explained, suddenly making a connection she had overlooked. "The cellular recognition patterns we documented in Aquarian marine life, particularly the luminous abyss coral, inform the targeting parameters." Chen's expression sharpened with interest. "The same coral mentioned in Solon's private research notes? The ones suggesting regenerative applications?" "Yes," Maya confirmed, surprised that the Earth representative was aware of those recently discovered notes. "Though we never had the opportunity to fully develop those applications before the accident." "Perhaps," Talus suggested carefully, "that research direction is precisely what someone wished to prevent." The observation hung in the air between them, a disturbing possibility that aligned with Halverson's earlier warnings about isolationist interference. If Solon had indeed been on the verge of a breakthrough in regenerative medicine with cross-species applications, It would represent exactly the kind of collaborative advancement that isolationist factions opposed. "We should continue this discussion in a more secure setting," Dr. Chen advised, glancing meaningfully at the surrounding emergency operations. "Some theories are best examined with appropriate discretion," Maya agreed, though her mind was already racing with implications and connections. If someone had targeted their research specifically, first through the submersible accident and now through AI sabotage, what might they attempt next? And how did her own recovery case fit into their agenda? The emergency situation gradually stabilized over the next several hours. Technical teams restored basic AI functionality, though Hermes operated at reduced capacity with enhanced security protocols. The injured personnel were transferred to the medical bay, where Taven supervised their treatment with characteristic Viridian efficiency. By evening station time, Maya found herself in a high-security conference room with Commander Voss, Director Halverson, and representatives from the Bioethics Council. The mood was tense as security officers presented their preliminary findings regarding the system sabotage. "The malicious code was sophisticated," reported Chief Security Officer Reyes, displaying technical data on the main screen. "It was designed to remain dormant until specific conditions were met. In this case, the scheduled final evaluation of Dr. Kepler's recovery." "How did it enter our systems?" Voss demanded. "Through an apparently legitimate medical data package received from the Phobian Medical Consortium 3 weeks ago," Reyes explained, glancing apologetically toward Talus Val. The package contained requested comparative physiological metrics related to Dr. Kepler's case. Talus's skin rippled with color patterns, indicating distress. "The consortium would never knowingly transmit corrupted data. This suggests our own systems were compromised first." "Precisely," Halverson interjected. "This appears to be a sophisticated operation with multiple points of infiltration. The question becomes, what was the true objective?" All eyes turned to Maya, who had been quietly processing the implications of these revelations. "If someone wanted to prevent my recovery documentation, they could have targeted me directly," she observed. "This seems designed to create maximum disruption, while specifically compromising the AI system during a crucial observation period. As if someone wanted to cast doubt on the technological reliability of the station," Dr. Chen suggested. "Or perhaps to ensure that the final evaluation would need to be conducted manually, without AI verification of the results." The theory resonated with Maya's own thoughts, which might allow accusations of manipulation or bias in the recovery documentation. Halvorsen nodded slowly. "Creating uncertainty about the scientific validity of your case, and by extension, about human physiological capabilities in general." The political dimensions were becoming clearer. If certain factions within the alliance sought to limit human expansion or influence, discrediting scientific findings about human resilience would serve their agenda. Create doubt about human recovery capabilities, suggest technological enhancement rather than natural biology, and the case for restricting human activities gains credibility. "We need to identify the source of this sabotage," Voss stated firmly, "and determine whether it connects to the submersible accident that killed Dr. Solon." "I believe it does," Maya said, drawing surprised looks from several attendees. "But not in the way we might have assumed. I don't think I was the primary target in either incident. I think Solon's research was—" She activated her datapad, displaying the private research notes that Naren had shared with her. Solon was developing a hypothesis about regenerative applications of the luminous abyss coral, applications that might have cross-species potential. He planned to discuss it with me after our final collection dive, but the accident prevented that conversation. "You believe someone wanted to stop this research?" Talus asked, multifaceted eyes, studying the displayed notes with scientific interest. "I believe the isolationist coalition would have significant motivation to prevent advancements in cross-species medical technology," Maya replied. particularly technology that might blur the distinctions between evolutionary lineages. Halvorson's expression had grown increasingly thoughtful during this exchange. This aligns with intelligence reports about increased isolationist activity in this sector. Their fundamental ideology opposes the kind of collaborative research this station represents. But why target the AI system specifically? Dr. Chen pressed. If disrupting research was the goal, there are more direct methods. The answer came to Maya suddenly. A connection she should have seen earlier. Hermes coordinates all our research databases and maintains integration between different species' scientific protocols. Without AI coordination, true cross-species collaboration becomes exponentially more difficult. Precisely, Voss agreed. The station was designed around AI-facilitated cooperation between different scientific methodologies. Compromise that foundation, and the entire collaborative structure becomes unstable. The implications extended far beyond Maya's personal case, or even Solon's research. This was an attack on the fundamental premise of the alliance itself, that different species could work together, combining their unique evolutionary advantages to achieve greater collective advancement than any could manage alone. "We need to reconvene the full Bioethics Council," Tallis declared. "If isolationist sabotage has reached this level of sophistication and strategic targeting, it represents a threat to scientific cooperation throughout the alliance." "Agreed," Halvorson said. "But we should also consider the possibility that this goes beyond isolationist ideology. There are commercial interests that might benefit from disrupting cross-species medical research, particularly regenerative technologies with potential military applications." The discussion continued late into the night, with security protocols being elevated throughout the station and communications sent to Alliance headquarters requesting additional investigative resources. Maya found herself at the center of a complex web of scientific, political, and security concerns, far removed from the straightforward research that had brought her to Aquar originally. When the meeting finally adjourned, Maya returned to her quarters with a renewed sense of purpose. If her recovery case had become entangled with these larger conflicts, she would ensure it served the cause of scientific cooperation rather than division. And if Solon's research held promise for cross-species medical applications, she would see that work completed, not just as a memorial to her friend, but as a concrete demonstration of what the Alliance could achieve at its best. The following morning, Maya requested access to the specialized laboratory, where she and Solon had conducted their most sensitive research. Commander Voss approved the request with enhanced security protocols, and Maya spent hours reviewing their collective data on the luminous abyss coral with fresh perspective. Solon's private notes pointed toward molecular structures within the coral that facilitated extraordinary repair capabilities, structures that showed potential compatibility with vertebrate cellular systems, despite evolving in a completely different biological lineage. If his hypotheses proved correct, the applications for trauma medicine across multiple species would be revolutionary. "I thought I might find you here," came a voice from the laboratory entrance. Maya looked up to see Naren, the Aquarian scientist who had shared Solon's notes with her initially. "I'm trying to piece together what Solon had discovered," she explained. "His insights regarding molecular compatibility deserve to be developed." Naren moved closer, gill filaments rippling with what Maya had learned to recognize as scientific curiosity. "The Aquarian Science Ministry has reviewed your recovery documentation with great interest, Dr. Kepler, particularly the comparative analysis between human healing processes and those of other Alliance species." "And their conclusions?" Maya asked. "That different evolutionary paths have produced diverse solutions to the universal challenge of physical trauma," Naren replied. "None inherently superior, but each with applications that might benefit others through shared knowledge. This perspective, focusing on complementary diversity rather than competitive advantage, aligned perfectly with Maya's own views on alliance cooperation." "That's precisely the approach Solon and I took in our research," she said. His work on the coral's regenerative properties was aimed at applications that could benefit multiple species, not just humans or aquarians. Naren's multifaceted eyes studied her with unreadable intensity. There are those on my world who view such cross-species applications with concern, who believe each evolutionary lineage should develop according to its natural path, without interference. Isolationist sympathizers, Maya asked directly. They prefer the term evolutionary purists, Naren corrected. But yes, their philosophy aligns with what humans call isolationism. They have considerable influence in certain scientific circles. The implication hung between them, a suggestion that such influences might extend into the research station itself, perhaps even to personnel who had access to critical systems. Maya considered this possibility carefully before responding. Science has always advanced through exchange of knowledge, she said finally. Even on Earth, our greatest breakthroughs often came from combining insights across different disciplines and cultures. The Alliance simply extends that principle across species boundaries. A perspective Solon shared, Naren acknowledged, gill filaments shifting to patterns that suggested respect. His final research journal entries speak of his excitement about potential collaborative breakthroughs. Then, let's honor his vision by completing what he began, Maya suggested. Would you be willing to assist me in developing his hypotheses about the coral's regenerative applications? The invitation represented more than scientific collaboration. It was an explicit rejection of the isolationist philosophy that had likely motivated the sabotage attempts. By continuing Solon's cross-species research openly and transparently, they would send a clear message about their commitment to Alliance principles. Naren's color patterns shifted through complex sequences before settling into what Maya recognized as affirmation. I would be honored to continue Solon's work. The Aquarian Science Ministry has authorized me to facilitate full information sharing on this project, with appropriate security protocols, of course. This development represented a significant shift from the initial suspicion that had surrounded Maya's recovery. Where once her human resilience had been viewed with concern by many non-human observers, now it was being recognized as one evolutionary approach among many, different but complementary to the capabilities of other Alliance species. Over the following days, Maya and Naren established a collaborative research protocol that integrated both human and Aquarian methodologies. They were joined by Dr. Chen, whose expertise in comparative physiology proved invaluable, and Talis Val, who contributed advanced Fobian imaging technology that allowed unprecedented visualization of cellular repair processes. The Bioethics Council, after extensive deliberation, issued a formal statement regarding Maya's recovery case. Rather than focusing on human resilience as a potential source of imbalance in the Alliance, the statement emphasized the scientific value of diverse physiological adaptations and the importance of transparent knowledge sharing between species. Meanwhile, the investigation into the sabotage attempts continued, with security teams uncovering evidence of a coordinated campaign targeting collaborative research throughout Alliance territories. Director Halverson coordinated with diplomatic representatives from multiple worlds to address the isolationist threat, while carefully avoiding rhetoric that might inflame interspecies tensions. 6 months after the accident that had claimed Solon's life, Maya stood before a different kind of council, a scientific consortium gathered to review the preliminary findings from the regenerative research she had continued in his honor. The audience included representatives from 12 Alliance species, all with interest in potential medical applications. The molecular structures identified by Dr. Solon in the luminous abyss coral demonstrate remarkable adaptability across biological systems, Maya explained, displaying complex data visualizations on the main screen. When properly calibrated, these compounds facilitate accelerated tissue repair without compromising cellular integrity. Naren, standing beside her as research partner, continued the presentation. Initial trials show compatibility with aquarian, human, viridian, and phobian cellular structures, with modifications currently being developed for additional species. Dr. Chen added the clinical perspective. The potential applications range from emergency trauma treatment to long-term regenerative therapy for degenerative conditions. Perhaps most significantly, the technology builds on natural biological processes rather than replacing them, enhancing each species' innate healing capabilities according to their evolutionary design. The questions that followed were scientifically rigorous, but notably free from the political undertones that had characterized earlier discussions of Maya's case. The focus remained on methodology, verification protocols, and potential applications, the substance of science rather than its political implications. As the presentation concluded to enthusiastic response, Maya found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. What had begun with personal tragedy, broken ribs, and a lost colleague, had evolved into something that honored Solon's memory far more meaningfully than any memorial could. Collaborative research that transcended species boundaries to benefit all Alliance members. The final validation came in an unexpected form, when Counselor Fenn approached Maya after the presentation. The aquarian's gill filaments displayed the complex pattern that indicated formal respect as he spoke. Dr. Kepler, the Aquarian Science Ministry has reviewed the complete record of your recovery process, along with your subsequent research contributions. They have authorized me to convey their official finding. Human physiological resilience represents not a threat to Alliance balance, but a valuable evolutionary adaptation that complements other species' capabilities. Coming from a representative who had initially viewed her recovery with open skepticism, this acknowledgement carried particular weight. "I appreciate that recognition, Counselor," Maya replied. "Though I would suggest that every Alliance species possesses unique adaptations of equal value. Our strength lies in combining these diverse capabilities rather than comparing them." "A perspective worthy of Solon himself," Naren commented, joining the conversation. He often spoke of the evolutionary symphony created when different biological lineages harmonize their knowledge. The metaphor resonated with Maya, capturing the essence of what the Alliance represented at its best. Not homogenization of different species, but coordination of their distinctive strengths toward shared advancement. Her own recovery, remarkable by many standards, was simply one note in that greater composition. Later that evening, as Maya stood in the observation dome, watching the bioluminescent patterns of Aquar's ocean life shimmer through the transparent barrier, Commander Voss joined her in silent appreciation of the view. "The station has received approval for expanded research initiatives," he informed her, after a comfortable silence. "Your work with Naren on regenerative applications has become something of a model for cross-species collaboration." "Solon would be pleased," Maya said, feeling both satisfaction and lingering grief for her lost colleague. He always believed the greatest scientific advances would come at the intersection of different evolutionary perspectives. A belief apparently shared by many throughout the Alliance, Voss noted. "Despite isolationist efforts to sow division, your case has ultimately strengthened support for collaborative research. Sometimes the strongest responses to injury aren't just physical, but philosophical." Maya smiled at the observation, recognizing its truth. Her broken ribs had healed weeks ago, but the greater healing, the reinforcement of Alliance principles against those who would divide different species, continued to unfold across multiple worlds. "Humans shrug off injuries that kill other species," she mused, recalling how her case had initially been characterized. "But perhaps the more important truth is that all species recover more effectively when they heal together." As they stood watching the alien ocean's rhythmic patterns, Maya felt a sense of purpose, clearer than any she had known before coming to Aquar. The accident that had nearly claimed her life had also given it new direction. Continuing Solon's legacy of boundary-crossing research while demonstrating through her own recovery the resilience that came from embracing diversity rather than fearing it. The injuries that had once divided species through suspicion and political maneuvering had ultimately united them through scientific collaboration and shared purpose. Perhaps the most remarkable recovery of all. In the vast ocean beyond the station, life continued its evolutionary journey, countless species adapting to challenges in ways as diverse as their environments. Within the Alliance, a parallel evolution unfolded as different sentient species learned to combine their unique strengths and compensate for individual limitations through cooperation. Maya's case. A human who had survived injuries that killed an aquarian had briefly threatened that delicate balance. But in the end, it had reinforced the fundamental truth upon which the Alliance was built: that differences between species represented not threats to be feared, but resources to be shared. Not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths to be coordinated. As research continued and knowledge expanded, the artificial boundaries between evolutionary lineages gradually dissolved, not erasing the beautiful diversity of life's adaptations, but revealing the universal principles that connected them all. Principles that transcended the particular forms they took across countless worlds and species. Maya returned to her laboratory, where samples of the luminous abyss coral glowed with potential yet to be fully understood, much like the Alliance itself, still evolving toward a future where the injuries of one species might never again mean death for another, where the resilience of each contributed to the strength of all. The story of broken ribs and remarkable healing had become something larger, a chapter in the ongoing narrative of life's endless adaptability and the power of knowledge shared across boundaries, once thought impermeable. In that greater story, Maya had found not just recovery but purpose, not just healing but growth. And somewhere, she liked to think, Solon would have appreciated the symmetry, how his death had ultimately led to discoveries that might prevent similar losses across multiple species, how the very differences between their physiologies had inspired research that would eventually benefit all. Different paths, different strengths, different vulnerabilities, but a shared future made stronger through diversity embraced rather than feared. Perhaps that was the most remarkable recovery of all.